30 years, the Lodha Group has been building Mumbai's soaring heights. Founded in 1980 by Mangal Prabhat Lodha, currently serving his 4th term as a member of the Legislative Assembly in Mumbai from the BJP. With the chairman involved in politics, it was left to his sons Abhisheck and Abhinandan to steer Lodha forward. Abhisheck, an industrial and systems engineer from Georgia Tech and a former consultant with McKinsey in Atlanta, and Abhinandan, an MBA from Cardiff, joined the family business in 2003. In the process of developing close to 30 million square feet of prime real estate, the Lodha brothers made an impact with high-end luxury housing, but now aim to provide high-quality, affordable housing for the aspirational Indian. With over 38 projects underway in and around Mumbai, the Lodha Group is clear. It has no pan-India plans, even though it has made inroads into markets like Hyderabad and Pune. Having received one of the largest FDIs in the real estate sector in 2007 from Deutsche Bank Singapore, Abhisheck and Abhinandan are now looking for capital through a public listing. We talked to the Lodhas about the real estate bust, plans for their IPO, the Dubai crisis, and running a real estate family business. Many thanks for joining us on the show. Abhinandan, let me start by asking you, because you've been around for less time in the business than Abhisheck actually has been, and last year was perhaps the worst year that the real estate business, not just in India but globally, could have seen. What to your mind was the big lesson?
I think the one learning from last year was that there is a reality between what the market really wants and what you need to offer, and you need to move away from what are construed theories of growth capital and construed theories of demand, etc., and move more towards reality. And liquidity driven growth will not sustain the long run. It is consumption driven demand which is required for an economy to grow and for an organization to grow. So the reality check, has it sunk in, Abhisheck, you think?
It's been a great learning experience over the last 12 months. I think 2006 to early 2008 was robust growth, and that was great. But I think
and nobody believed the party would ever end, right?
Absolutely. It's taught us what really creates value, what doesn't. What is effort well done and what is effort wasted.
The real estate business globally, but more so in India, has always been this sort of seen as this disorganized sector in that sense. Corruption, the nexus with politics and so on and so forth. Has it really gotten more efficient as it gets more organized?
Definitely over the last 5 years, a significant move towards making the business a lot more professional in the way it's done. I think better talent is making a significant difference to which companies do well and which don't. And the only way to get good talent and to retain it is to make sure that you're transparent in the way you're doing things. There are certain pitfalls of doing real estate which exist in India, which exist across the globe, and that is something which is not going to change very easily, some of the things that you mentioned. But definitely on the consumer side, in the things you do internally, how you deal with external suppliers, that part of the business has definitely matured a lot.
How much is it also on account of the fact that a lot of people like you are actually going to now tap the capital markets, do an IPO, get listed, and that requires most players to actually follow certain corporate governance norms. So how much of the business is actually changing as you actually go hunt for capital?
I think the hunt for capital is definitely one part of the improvement in the process, but I don't think it's only public capital. I think we've got about $600 million over the last 3 years, and that automatically requires that you make improvements in certain practices which were followed earlier. Clearly, the capital availability for growth, as well as what the consumer now expects from grade A developers, which is driving the move towards having a more transparent, more process-based way of doing business.
But do you see a sort of herd mentality, especially as far as the Indian real estate space is concerned? Because when you see fundraising, everybody raises funds together using the QIP route. When you're actually talking about moving to affordable housing, the entire industry goes from luxury to affordable housing pretty much at the same time. Are you sort of sensing this predictability, this kind of herd mentality within the Indian real estate space at this point?
Over the next 5 years, you will see that players will get differentiated between themselves. Already it's happened, and they'll further get differentiated based on their abilities, their way of doing business, and their maturity, etc. etc. If you look at these herd mentality closely, you will see there are often first movers, and then everybody else follows, and the first mover takes an advantage. Even though about 10, 12, 15 companies have expressed their desire to go public, I think it will be a slow and steady process where the best and the brightest will come out first.
Are you feeling tentative and apprehensive? Because just when we thought that things were beginning to turn around, we've had Dubai happen. So are you feeling a bit tentative at this point in time as you sort of get ready to do the IPO?
Sure, Dubai was something which was ripe in everybody's mind that it will actually burst at some point in time. I mean, we saw 33% exodus of Indian population from Dubai over the last 18 months, and people had really begun to realize that beyond a point, this was just investor-driven demand with no end use actually happening. There were towers and towers built out with nobody actually living in them, and it followed the cycle which it always follows globally, that beyond a point the bubble has to burst. But the Indian economic scenario is I think fairly different, and the demand is extremely real, and here it is more the ability to actually supply to that demand than the reality of the demand which is
sure. While it may not impact demand in India, but just in terms of funds, and this is really the time when everybody is going around looking for funds. Do you think the enthusiasm which we were seeing return, maybe that's going to ebb or dry up?
I think clearly, in spite of what actually happened, they are very, very clear that globally there is enormous amount of need for putting capital into India and China, and within India people are looking for real estate is a story which attracts more people, and they're looking for a differentiated organization to put capital into, and if there is a differentiated organization, capital is definitely not a constraint.
Well, talking about the big event, and that's the IPO that you are planning, most of the loose ends tied up. You've already filed your DRHP.
We filed a DRHP with SEBI in late September, and now have had a couple of rounds of queries from SEBI which we've answered. We're waiting for SEBI to come back with its clearance, and thereafter we'll be in a state of preparedness to go to the public markets based on the market conditions and the input from various investors.
What is the tentative timeline that you have in mind?
The early part of 2010 is what looks likely, but there's so many variables in this.
Are you worried about any particular variable at this point?
No, I think at this point in time the markets look decent. Our company has been recognized and received well as a potential investment opportunity by various quarters.
But in terms of pricing, because that's really going to hold the key as far as the success of the IPO is concerned, and we've seen a whole spate of IPOs that perhaps have been overpriced, so that's the sense that we get from the market. What's the thought really at this point in time in terms of pricing?
I think the thought is clear that we're going to the markets for the first time, and as an organization we believe we've created value, and that value will get demonstrated over a period of time. So anybody who will be investing in our IPO should end up making money out of it, and we believe we will leave a good amount of value on the table for it to make it not an attractive proposition alone for investors, but to make it a good long-term bet for people to recognize that 3 years ago I put money into Lodha and see this is where I've moved on.
So not too aggressive on the pricing front. That's very clear between the both of you. What do you intend to do as far as this IPO money is concerned? Because I understand there's about 1,000 crore rupees in debt, and you will use some of the proceeds to retire the debt, and you will fund some of your expansion plans. Broadly give us a sense of what you'd like to do.
A very small percentage, only about 300 crores goes into debt repayment. That's what's estimated. A significant amount of the money is going towards the expansion and development of the current assets that we own. We have about 4,000 plus acres of land in and around Mumbai, and we believe that we want to develop a significant amount of infrastructure in some of those large land holdings to create disproportionate value, because typically the cycle in real estate is build the house, then build the roads, and then build the school, whereas it ought to be build the road, build the school, then build the house.
Right.
And that's exactly what we intend to do. So about 800 odd crores of the capital we raise will go towards infrastructure development in some of our key land holdings. About 600 crores is going to be used towards working capital needs of the company, construction capital, etc. And the remaining amount of about 1,100 crores is what we intend to use for opportunistic land acquisition in Mumbai.
But the focus will continue to be Mumbai, right?
Yes. We're very clear.
You don't have any aspirations of being a pan-India player. You don't want to take on the DLFs and the Unitex.
We have no aspirations of being a pan-India player. Our aspiration is to be the best real estate company, not necessarily the biggest. We have started outside Mumbai with a medium-sized project in Hyderabad, which has done very well in spite of the trying market conditions there. But we believe that Mumbai is the best real estate market in India. It offers significant supply-demand imbalances which are going to take a long time to get served, and offers good margins.
So give me a sense of what it will look like for you in the next 5 to 6 years.
We'll developing close to 60 million square feet over the next 6 years' time, out of which 30 million square feet is already off the ground. So that's in terms of pure numbers. In terms of sales, that would amount to close to $7 to $8 billion worth of sales, at such an annual sale rate of almost $1.4 billion. We are online to achieve what we projected out as targets for this year, and based on that, the growth does not look disproportionate to manage. So I think that's where we really are.